Hello and welcome, Exiles, to the part 2 of our progression on Giga. We are now at 10,000 ES. We're level 87, and we've played about another 6 hours or something like that. I will say I did not post yesterday because I was celebrating my dad's birthday with family, so I apologize for that, but we didn't do any progression. This is from the progress from the day before, and didn't have time to make a video yesterday because I was busy. Now, this character's progression is into the early maps. We're just did our first like T11 map yesterday, or not yesterday, the day before, and we're at about 14 hours played, 10k ES. The main differences between what I'm wearing right now and what I was wearing yesterday is I believe we upgraded our amulet slightly, upgraded our helmet slightly, but mainly we got passives. We were level 69, now we're level 87. That's the difference in about, I want to say, like 17, 18 passives, whatever it is. And that is the primary difference that happened between being at 6k ES and 10k ES. This sort of character is something where every additional source of power you put into it gives you greater and greater returns. For example, when I did this character and I started out the build and I was a level 74 character and I had 24,000 ES with that level of gear that was already like really good, even though it was already really good, every little minute little improvement I made to that character's gear still made a pretty large ES difference. And that's the sort of scaling that ends up happening when you put on Ivory Tower. It starts to get better and better. Now, I want to talk about the fact I'm still wearing a Ghost Wraith and give you a bit of a comparison, because this is something I've been asked about quite a few times before, and I just want to showcase this so people are aware. Ghost Wraith versus Ivory Tower. What's the big difference here? When do you swap, or what is the reason that Ivory Tower is better than Ghost Wraith? There's a lot of questions I get a lot of times when asking about these two chess pieces in particular. The key difference here is Ghost Wraith is something that converts your energy shield, or converts your life to energy shield. What that means is the increases and reductions to both ES and life are additive together. So like if you have 100 base life, and let's say you have 10% increased life and 10% increased ES, what that ends up meaning is the ES number you're going to end up with is going to be 50% of that base 100, which is 50 life, and then you're going to have 10% life, 10% ES increase, which ends up being 20% total, and you'll end up with 60 base ES as an outcome. That is very specifically different than Ivory Tower because they are separated with Ivory Tower. Ivory Tower says the amount of life you reserve gives you a flat ES, which means your increases to life end up being separated, so they end up being somewhat multipliers of each other rather than increases that are stacked additively. So that means is early on, this will be stronger just because it's a higher number, 50 versus 30, but this ends up outscaling the 50% as you get more and more increases to both life and ES, because they're separated by the fact that the life amount gives you a flat ES number. That base ES number is then scaled again. So that's the important difference. So right now at 10k ES, I believe I'm close to the break point. Essentially, it's early on, Ghost Wraith is better, and then as you get better and better gear, the two converge, and eventually Ivory Tower will just pass and be better. But let's just showcase this real quickly, so that way you can see it. So we're at 10k ES now, and then let's go swap over these auras real quick just to demonstrate it. If I put these auras on, you see you have the same auras, and granted I could reserve a little bit more life. So let's say instead of a level 17 vitality, we have a level 19 vitality, which reserves a little bit more. And let's make sure we have everything else reserved correctly. Everything's on. Okay. Granted, I could reserve another like 200 life here, which would give us another 60 base ES, which would make the number closer. You'll see at Ivory Tower, we're at about 9,300. And if I optimize this character, it could get closer to probably 9,500. At this point in the character, we only have about 900 strength and about 400 in. Our increases to ES aren't really that much. And also our increases to life are kind of just, they're okay. We have a few sources of increased life here, a few sources here. Like we have a decent tree in terms of like life increases. Maybe it's 100 to 120% increased life, something like that. At this point, they're close to equal. With them being close to equal, Ivory Tower gives you a little bit more regen, and it gives you less chaos res. So basically it's like early on, okay, now I need to stop accidentally pressing X and weapon swapping. But anyways, early on, this means our chaos res is 28 versus our chaos res is capped. So at this point, I still want to be wearing the Ghost Wraith because initially having the 50 chaos res is pretty beneficial. But you'll see probably by, I want to say the next update, I'll be wearing Ivory Tower because I believe as I progress the levels and start to get better and better gear where int and strength is more priority, that will make this overtake Ghost Wraith, and it does just pull away. It continually catches up, and then it pulls away. Initially, when I started this character, when I was at that 6k ES number, if you remember that at the very first video yesterday, the difference in Ivory Tower and Ghost Wraith was about 2,000. When I put on Ghost Wraith versus Ivory Tower I was at 4k ES, and Ghost Wraith I was at 6k. Granted, the life reservation was not optimized really at that point, so Ivory Tower was just a little bit disproportionately off as well, but still, hopefully this showcases the difference is now like 500 instead of 2,000, and then as we level up, Ivory Tower will continue to catch up and then outpace Ghost Wraith eventually. So I wanted to clarify that difference here. Now let's go ahead and do a bit of a showcase of whatever maps we're on. Tier 9 map seems fine. 2 proj plus flash charges, which could be a little bit problematic for my character. Whatever, we're just going to run it and show you what this character looks like in a mapping situation. Don't know what I have on my keybinds. I think I messed them up a little bit. But I will say this for the character. I am thinking about the fact that, number one, I lost today due to I was going to be celebrating my dad's birthday. But number two is the Settlers Reset is coming up pretty soon here. So I think what I might end up doing, I'm going to treat this as essentially a dry run because we're not really going to get to do enough of the progress I would want to do, because really to properly take this character from 0 all the way to its, you know, more min-maxed extent, you need more days than 5. Initially, when I was planning to do this project, they hadn't announced the fact they're going to give us a fresh reset. So I was planning to just play this character for like 30 days. So well, this I'll treat as a dry run. We'll see how far we can get with, I believe, what will be 4 to 5 days of progress total. Probably, you know, somewhere in the range of like 30 hours to 40 hours gameplay time, maybe less, depending on how the days go. And then we will run it back in the Settlers Reset, where we'll have more time to fully flesh out the progression. Also, Trade League is a much stronger environment to progress a character. There's some people that think a group found is somehow better for gear progression. It's just not. The difference in loot that is generated in a small group found of a couple hundred people versus a actual, you know, GGG supported reset where there are going to be thousands of players is the difference in very, very key pieces and a lot of niche loot that you can pick up for relatively cheap. There's a scenario where I have Chaos Orbs. I'm not using them to buy gear because, you know, everybody's just selling things for 1 Wisdom Scroll. But on a Trade League, I could go buy specific items that are very, what's the word? I guess tuned for what I need versus just the best item somebody had that's close to what I need, but not really what I need, if you're following what I'm saying. Point is, in a Trade League environment with, you know, a larger base of players, it is much, much easier to actually gear out and set up a very strong character. An example of this would be just comparing base hardcore versus base softcore. Even though those hardcore players are very good players, they're just simply outnumbered so significantly. I'll give you an example of this. One time I was watching Waggle play, and he went to look for timeless jewels. And I told him, hey, use the timeless jewel calculator. You can set up some mods you need and look for it. And little did I know, when I went to check Hardcore's trade, the amount of lethal prides on the trade site were less than 100 for Hardcore trade. And that was offline and online. And then I checked Softcore, and when I did the same search, it was 10,000 plus. You know, when the number it gives you that says there's more than this, but this is just the number I'm going to tell you is available thing. And I was like, okay, that was a smack in the face of how different these economies are, because there's just so many more players, so much more loot being generated, and that is a very strong environment to be in terms of progressing and gearing out a character. So that was just a T9 map. I don't know if I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing while running it, but this is, if you had just an early setup of Ghost Wraith. I will say I'm still not very well optimized. In a trade environment, I would not be using Dune at this point. I would not be using Saber's Touch. It still really isn't very optimal to have these items. It's something where if I was starting this on a fresh start, I would be probably much more likely to be int focused. I'm not sure I would be going blood magic. I'm not sure it's worth the pathing. I think it's an overinvestment. I did a test character at one point when I was trying to see if I could League Star RF into doing Sanctum, and I had about a 7k ES Scion with cheaper gear than this because it was more well optimized for a tree that just goes straight over and prioritizes more ES nodes, more int nodes, stuff like that. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I'm going to keep continuing to progress this character. This is the day 2 progress, and then on stream, we'll see if we can get enough gearing to justify Ivory Tower, because it does surpass Ghost Wraith when you start getting that increases to ES and increases to life to be higher and higher. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. And until next time, take care and peace out. Have a good one.